And welcome back to Zanpakuto Creation Series. Today's Zanpakuto Creation Series suggestion comes to us from Yaju World. And they ask a question. Now, in anime, there are very few characters in anime as a whole that kind of have the unique battle lust that Kenpachi Zaraki has. That man lives to fight. He gets a hard on every time he gets a good fight. There are very few characters in anime and fiction period who have his kind of battle lust. But if there were someone who constantly equals him, or at least close to him, Yujiro Hanma from the Baki the Grappler Baki series would probably be a close candidate. I mean, to the point where if he existed in the same role as Kenpachi and was a Shinigami, they wouldn't just be friends. They'd be rivals. They'd love to just keep going at each other. Maybe they'd be lovers. We don't know their sexuality. Well, we don't know Kenpachi's sexuality, nor that we care. But for the erotic slash fics, we care. But hell, we actually know Yujiro's very well. But point being is, he is someone who would actually, if Kenpachi, for some reason, disappeared from the series, could easily take the mantle of a Kenpachi if you were to turn him into a Soul Reaper. Or if you were to turn him into a Hollow, he'd probably be the equivalent of, Kenpachi as a Hollow. So, this is a guy who is nicknamed the Ogre, the strongest creature in the world. This is a guy who's actually never truly been defeated. He acknowledged Baki pretty much as his equal, and technically he said he lost. But it was he didn't really beat Yujiro. That had to do with the whole imagination thing and making him actually believe it for just even 1 second. And that doesn't. I think all the readers agree that while that's more of a story element for him to recognize Baki's ability, none of us really think that he's stronger than Yujiro. We never got a full end to the fight with Musashi, although, according to Motobe, he wasn't sure Yujiro would have survived a straight-on hit by Musashi. I think Motobe was just a little too high on his own ego, but personally, I think Yujiro probably would have. But regardless, he's never actually lost a fight in the series. This is a man who is truly a monster, a martial artist. And he enjoys fighting with his fist. He doesn't fight with swords. He fights with his fist. In truth, if we were to really break it down, he'd probably be closer to a Yoruichi type, where even though he had a Zanpakuto and only figured out his Shikai and Bankai, he likes to fight with his fists more than he does with his sword. That said, however, let's actually create a Zanpakuto for him, now that we're almost 3 minutes in. So, I think it would be a melee type with an ability that isn't quite melee-esque. And particularly when we get to the Bankai, it's more that the Shikai is mostly melee with a unique ability that transfers into the overall Bankai, which is less melee. Standard Katana, although with a character like him, Kodachi Nodachi might be the better option. Something like kind of what Kenpachi has. Though Kenpachi doesn't necessarily have any standard type of sword. But I use that as an example. So if he doesn't have a katana, he has probably like a Nodachi or a Kodachi, a really long sword. Its release would be, I try to think of a couple different releases for the name of this. But I think, Rage, Release Your Limits, crush them in your hand, something like that. Could be a good release because he is the ogre. He literally has his muscles literally form the shape of a demon's face when he flexes them on his back. Ogre's Fist. That is the name of the Zanpakuto, or Oruju Ken. Ogre's Fist. Its Bankai though would be Ogre's Wrath, Lover of Battle, and the Bankai roughly would translate to Oga no Retsu Sensu no Kobito. And no surprising, his spirit is that of kind of like a Oni demon ogre creature. Here's the thing, I'm going to liken him to Kenpachi a lot in this because I think he really is he would be the equivalent of a Kenpachi in the Baki world. He really is a lover of battle, a demon, a kind of demon personified who just does what he wants. He's not, I mean, he's a bastard. Let's be very clear. Yujiro is a bastard and has done some terrible things. But he is, morally speaking, when you actually break Yujiro down, he's not evil, but he's also not good. He really is. He's done both good things and bad things. He's done everything on the grid, but he is just himself. And he doesn't go around like murdering people for the fun of it. Or there is always a reason behind what he does. Granted, he has committed some terrible things, particularly a lot of rape. But yeah, again, evil is maybe not the right terminology. He's certainly, though, he's certainly like maybe malice or carnal desire. You know what? He's carnal. That is exactly what it is. He is carnal desires, carnal feelings personified. And that includes lust. When he's horny, he will find something to satisfy that, man or woman. When he's angry, he will F you up. When he's happy and excited, he wants to F you up. When he's hungry, he will eat and he will enjoy himself. He is kind of carnal stuff personified. Now, what the Zanpakuto takes the form of when he releases it, I think would be something very similar to what happens with Kensei. His katana just turns into a trench knife. Now, a trench knife has other abilities, but it's a trench knife. It gets really small. With Yujiro, I think the actual thing that suits him very well is a knuckle duster, like a brass knuckle. And it would be the kind of thing that it would actually lend itself to his style of fighting, where he just prefers to fight with his hands in martial arts and his body. Now, what this Zanpakuto actually does is really just kind of feed off of not malice, honestly, it feeds off battle lust is what it does. Not like Kenpachi, who just, Kenpachi is so strong is the problem that even though he gets battle lust, he's so bored at the time, he can't really get into the groove. So it's very rare he comes across a strong enough opponent. He had Ichigo, Naruto was a scenario where that happened. Pardon. Gremmy, he really wasn't like that with Gremmy. He got excited a little bit, but he wasn't in just pure unadulterated battle lust. Unohana, he definitely got that way. Gerard, he got that way. But when you really break down his fights, he hasn't had too many opponents where he could really just go into that straight battle lust he loves. Yujiro, though, kind of just has fun overlording over people. Or lording over people. So I think it just feeds off his will of battle. And the strikes get stronger the more he's enjoying battle. It's a Zanpakuto that actually responds very much to its user's emotions. Now, that might sound like, well, Zanpakuto won't really do that. Well, technically, a Zanpakuto, as long as you can think of it and find a person that fits that style of Zanpakutos can have any sort of abilities. And there is precedent for Zanpakutos, reacting to emotions or their abilities reacting to the Zanpakuto's emotions. We know from the way Rangiko described her Hinako that it's a very lazy Zanpakuto, like her. We know that Kiraku's Zanpakuto, Katen Kyo Katsui, we know that its abilities can vary because of its mood. So a Zanpakuto that actually feeds off your emotional state is not something I think would be out of the realm of possibility. And as Yujiro actually gets strong, it gets more and more invested in the fight. I think that the strikes become harder. You can actually see almost like shock waves or like a cone coming around his hand when he throws a punch. You can actually probably throw like I said shock wave punches as the fight goes on. But the thing about Yujiro is he's probably also similar to a Kenpachi that he's not going to go all out from the get. No. He wants to savor the fight. He wants to see if this opponent is worth his time. And generally speaking, with most strong characters, 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. So probably he never really feels the need to use his Zanpakuto if he doesn't have to. It would only be against really strong individuals he'd really have to do it, like the upper tier of the Espada, any of the Stern Ritters probably, or at least Stern Ritters and some of the stronger Stern Ritters anyway. Those would be characters he'd want to, Kenpachi, Yamamoto, Ichigo, those would be characters you'd want to actually really put the effort in. And that's I think where the Bankai comes in, because I think this would be one of those unique circumstances. There are unique circumstances for a lot of characters, particularly again Kenpachi, how he activated his Bankai, where this Bankai can't be released normally. this Bankai you probably have to keep fighting and actually reach a fever pitch of your Zanpakuto. Like you need to get that true love of battle, and maybe even understand in your spirit, and you have to come to an agreement where I think we've reached our max. We can't beat this guy with Shikai alone. And then you say, it's like, very well then, Bankai. And then, the energy, the energy comes off. And after the activation of the Bankai and the Ryatsu coming off of them dissipates, you'd see the final form of Yujiro, kind of, where now he's got two knuckle dusters. They're spiked. He's also got basically large metal rings wrapped around his shoulder and wrapped around his legs. And basically what this is that as he's fighting, first of all, his strength is enhanced beyond 5 to 10 times, like any Zanpakuto would do in Bankai. But beyond that, as he's fighting and as he's getting more, as the fight continues, Ryatsu leaks up, and then as he throws punches, a phantom limb, like similar to Komamura's Tenkin, would come out, except it's made completely of Ryatsu, like red Ryatsu coming off of him. And basically, as he's finally releasing all his power, the actual form of his Zanpakuto takes shape, and as the form of the ogre, of the spirit of his Zanpakuto, which could either be fighting right behind him, or right beside him. So he's so any punch he's throwing, it's the Oni as well fighting, or the ogre fighting as well. Or it could even envelop him and turn him into a reishi ogre, more or less, and just enhance his strength even further, and just the ferocity and the fact he's made of pure reishi and Ryatsu would make him extremely difficult to put down. I think this would blend itself well to someone who personifies a demon or an ogre who loves battle, but is not someone who really wants finite abilities, who's just more than willing to just get down and dirty. Because one of the things that I think is very important to remember about Zanpakutos is that a Zanpakuto, and I should have brought this up in my last video, and maybe I did, but a Zanpakuto is a representation of you. And particularly, one example I use is Soifone, where her Shikai represents the outside persona that she wants to represent, the master assassin, the leader of the stealth corps. But her inner Bankai, her Zanpakuto's true power, is this one-shot kill, but it's very loud, very brash, very immature comparatively, instead of a mature silent weapon. Very much how she is. She's still very young. She's very immature at points, particularly in the 1,000-year Blood War arc. We see her kind of be a little bit of a brat, and similar to how she reacted when she fought Yoruichi. Also, here I think we'd have this scenario as well, where the standard knuckle duster is granted. Yujiro is kind of very much in the open about who he is. He's never shied from who he is, but he can at least put on the guise of civility when he wants to, and has to, interact with the public. But I think the knuckle duster is that toned down thing you see about him. But when he fully just goes all out and just shows who he truly is, that is the ogre coming out. Now, weaknesses of the Zanpakuto, well, it has no long-range capabilities, really, at all. Until it reaches some of the, as I put it, the fever pitch state where his energy is really spiking, and he can throw a punch or throw a shockwave. There's no range capability with this. Also, it's Reishi versus Reishi, as always. Just because the Oni is made of Reishi and is super powerful does not make it indestructible or invincible. In fact, it's actually very much not that. As we know, doesn't matter what you're made of, how strong you are, you can be defeated. It doesn't matter, as long as it's Reishi to Reishi. And I would imagine that even though Yujiro would have to be, taking damage and all that, he could still be. Let me rephrase that sentence completely. Being hit could just increase his level to fight further, but he's still getting hit. He's not immune to damage. A perfect example of characters that would easily beat him. Aizen could probably beat him, although I wonder if Kenpachi could honestly have beaten Aizen prior, because of that battle instinct. I'm just wondering if Kenpachi's battle instinct could counteract Kyokiya's. Kyokiya. I can never pronounce the first name. Suigetsu. Kyokwa. It's not qua. I keep turning into a Q. Kokwa. And this is bothering the hell out of me. I haven't had to say it in a while is the problem. Kyokwa. I know it's Kyo. Where are you, Eisen? I need to find the name of it now because it's bothering the hell out of me. And I know I'm going to get someone who pronounces it in the comments. And I appreciate anyone who does it, but yeah, Kyokwa. God, it's really bugging me why I can't say this name. I've said it before in the past. So okay. Kyoka. There we go. The problem is I'm adding like extra syllables. It's really just Kyoka Suigetsu. Kyoka Suigetsu. Like someone like Aizen could probably do that. Beat him though. I'm assuming he doesn't have like a battle instinct that can counter it because the battle instinct doesn't count towards the 5 senses. That's what, and Kenpachi's potential was one of the reasons Aizen was actually afraid of him. Yeah, he actually legitimately did not want to fight Kenpachi before he fused with Hogyuku. And that's my man Kenny right there. But yeah, like Yamamoto could easily beat him. Shunsui could easily beat him. There's a lot of characters who could probably easily beat him in a straight out fight. Hell, even Kenpachi, I still think would probably just beat him. But it's still, he would be a very dangerous man. And he's a dangerous man in his own world. He's basically the strongest being. You put him in another world, well, he'd still be dangerous. Like, you put him in My Hero, he'd still be a very dangerous threat. He could take on a lot of quirky heroes, no problem. But there'd be other characters that could just end him, no problem. Anyway, I digress. That is my thoughts, though, on the Zanpakuto of Yujiro Hanma of Baki the Grappler. Let me know what you think of this Zanpakuto. Do you like this idea for a Zanpakuto? Do you dislike it? Let me know in the comments below. But until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And I'll see you folks next time.